Hi, and welcome to Friday, May the 8th. This is a Confidence on Camera lesson. Today we have casting director guest Kris Woznesensky, and I'm going to show you a little bit about him. He'll be here in mere minutes to talk to us about the casting process and what he sees coming next for casting. We're going to ask him about self-tapes, and then we're going to open it up to questions from all of you. Anybody who is watching this video later and is like, wow, these are amazing. I wish I could watch more of them. If you go onto confidenceoncamera.com, you'll be able to find links to all of the things. There's a Facebook group that has the link for the daily sessions, etc., etc. Now that I've said that, I really have to update that website, but that's another thing entirely. All right, here we go. Let's check these fellows out. So Kris and is part of a casting duo, Kris and Kara Casting. They operate in a casting office in Vancouver, BC, called The Casting Place at 33 East 7th Avenue. Some of you have probably auditioned from before. There's a selection of their projects here, and I just wanted to show you their slick website and some photos. They cast the feature Wonder with Julia Roberts and Jacob Tremblay. They cast commercials and music videos and independent features. They're one of the casting directors in town that handles a fair amount of film and TV, but also handles commercials. Of the folks who have come in so far, I think these are the only casting directors who regularly cast commercials. So maybe we can get them to talk a little bit about that, because we haven't had any commercial casting directors talk to us yet. Kris and Kara are a casting duo based in Vancouver, BC. Lots of experience, so much experience. In addition to their feature film and television work, Kris and Kara's portfolio includes numerous commercial campaigns for a variety of high-profile clients, including Reebok, Pepsi, Lexus, Tylenol, blah, 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 blah. Short films, features, film festivals, they're awesome. And if you want to read this yourself, it is krisandkaracasting.com. If you search their names, they're the first things that pop up. This is a super cute picture of Kris and Kara that they posted, that Kris posted on his IMDb profile that I wanted to show you. Kris and Kara, when they first started casting, used Beatty Street Casting Studios, which is the casting studio that I own and run, and have for the last, 8-9 years? And where I host Biz Studio, which is the kids and teens film and TV acting school that I also own and run. So I've known these two for a long time. Kris, if I'm remembering correctly, got started as an assistant for a different casting director, a commercial casting director named Kirsten DeWolf. Most casting directors start as assistants for somebody's casting, some other casting director. It's not like you can go to school to be a casting director. There's very, very few of them in Vancouver. So basically, first you have to put in years of service helping somebody else to be a casting director, and then you start to run your own sessions, or you break out on your own. So the ones who are still casting are the ones who wanted it the most, and have really paid their dues and put in their time. When they were at Beatty Street Studios, I witnessed them working very, very long days and getting themselves started. So we've got 123 credits here, plus credits as casting department, which means that probably associate casting, or sort of Canadian casting for something that was also cast in the States. So short films, independent features, the TV movie. Kara, same thing. Obviously, the Wonder, like I said, Elysium. Kara started as an assistant for a film and TV casting director, and then broke off to join Kris, and the two of them started casting together. So let's see if Kris is here with us yet. And if not, I will talk a little bit more about do we have Kris? There he is, Kris Woznesensky! So I've muted everybody else, but not you, sir. You just fine.
How's it going, Michael? Hello, everyone.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Do you go by Kris Woz now?
You know what? I prefer my long form last name, but it got so frustrating for producers with like the billing and all that stuff. So it's kind of like a short form, more just like an aesthetically easy to remember kind of thing.
Okay.
I've gone back for film and TV. I go back to using my normal credits, my normal last name. My parents got really upset with me when I shortened it.
Really?
They did not like that at all.
So we just looked at your flashy website, and your IMDb page. You probably caught us for the end of that. I told these folks that you got started as a casting assistant, and that most casting directors that I know in town, did.
Yeah.
What I would love is to get you to spend the first little bit just talking about sort of what casting life looks like, because one of the things that's really valuable, in my opinion, in these sessions is for them to hear, direct from you, the sort of what that casting process looks like, especially because then they can compare it with the other casting guests that we've had in the past couple of weeks and see like where the similarities, where the differences, and it helps demystify it a little bit. And then I've got a couple of questions if you run out of things to talk about.
For sure. I mean, I'll kind of explain our process pre-pandemic because, things are all kind of different right now. But they do look like they're getting back to getting ready to start rolling again. But yeah, I love the casting process. For me and Kara, I mean, I could say confidently now we've created a system where we kind of know how to approach a project. So, to keep it simple, we will get a script from a director or producer, usually a producer actually, it really depends, sometimes both of them. And they'll send us a script and say, hey, have a read. This is going to shoot from this date to this date. Let us know if you're interested and available. And so we'll read the script, and usually we love the script. And so once we sign on to the project, it's our responsibility to go through the script and kind of like, or not kind of, write a breakdown, like what you would see that your agents would send you. So we go and write a description of all the characters that we see in the script, from lead, from number one to even just like the no line actor roles, just so we kind of have like a dashboard of all the roles we need to cast, and then we'll add in our little descriptions. Once that's all been approved, then we send it out to all the agents. Agents will submit all of their ideas to us. And usually me and Kara have kind of like, especially for like, when it comes to younger roles, that's kind of more fun because we can see a lot more people, and anyone's kind of the skill level is so all over the place with younger people. So it's kind of fun just to bring in anyone who we want. But usually we do have some ideas of people that we think of as we read the script. Like when we see a character, sometimes people pop in our head like, oh, this person, I see this person in this role. So we'll write down as many ideas without looking at submissions first. And then, so we'll write those names down, put them in our bank, and then we'll look at submissions after. And then me and Kara will go through them and kind of compile a schedule of people that we want to see. And that is actually quite a long process. Me and Kara have a lot of fun building schedules, and we always like to see more people than less. Sometimes we don't always have like the budget to see a ton of actors for a role. So sometimes if we aren't getting what we're needing in the auditions, we'll extend out to more self-tapes. And yeah, we just kind of, we throw a bunch of paint on the wall, our favorite paints that we like. And what I mean by that as a metaphor, we'll read a bunch of people. Me and Kara will create a short list of the actors that we really love and that we want to present to the director and producers. And then they'll take that short list and even make it shorter. And then what we'll do is bring you back in for a callback. And the callback is when you'd meet like the directors and the producers, and then you'd work with them. And then after that, then they go make their deliberations. And then once we have an approved actor for a role, then that's when we contact the agent and negotiate the deal. And that's essentially kind of like in simple form, the process when it comes to casting an actor for a role.
And just for context, can you talk a little bit about how many submissions you tend to get, and how many people that you typically see, just so that everybody's got that for reference?
Yeah, a lot. We get a lot. It's very different for film and versus commercials, but for film, yeah, sometimes we can get up to like, for the principal roles, we can get up to 400 to 500 submissions per role. We do tend to get less submissions on the lead roles because usually when it's a lead role, that's going to go to someone who already has like a lot of credits, but that's usually for adults. Again, it's kind of open season for younger roles. But yeah, it could be anywhere from, depending, sometimes if the role is really specific, sometimes we get no submissions because we kind of get tasked with a lot of finding like really, really specific types of people. So, sometimes we're on the hunt and we're going outside of our submission base to find these people for roles, especially with the independent films like The Body Remembers, when it was a large like Indigenous cast, and we don't have a huge sea of Indigenous actors here. It's starting to grow, but sometimes we'll have to go outside of our regular source of contacts. But usually I would say typically we'd get about 300 submissions per role. And, when it's a movie like Wonder, we pretty much saw everyone in the city because we were allowed to, and we had 6 months to cast a film, but that's not normal. I would say it's more normal that we have about a month and a half. So we would try to see roughly around 40 people in the room. But that being said, we will extend self-tapes out if we want more options. And we always like to have more options than less. Yeah, I would say per role, we'd see about 40 to 50 on average. Sometimes more, sometimes less.
And can you talk about what those numbers are like with commercial casting? You're the first person who we've had join us who's got experience doing commercial casting as well.
Commercial casting is so different, and it's constantly evolving, like their approach to casting, like especially for the bigger campaigns where they sometimes won't even have a specific role in mind. They'll just have like an age category and they're just looking for people that pop. Sometimes they don't even know what they're looking for until we show them some interesting people. We'll get like a lot of requests like looking for interesting people between this age and this age. And, we just want to get to know their personality. So sometimes we'll just make up what we're doing in the audition and just do something fun. When it is more specific, they expect like on an average day, like film and TV, they like having their options whittled down and just having a few options, whereas commercials, they want to have a sea of options. So we would bring between 100 to 200 people in a day for a commercial, where it would be a lot less. And we would curate a link in film that would be a lot shorter, whereas our curating for commercials, it's more abundant. There's just so many more people for them to look through. Because there's so many other factors that go on with like advertising, casting, and all that stuff, and so many marks they've got to check off. So we just kind of, it's constantly evolving. But yeah, that's pretty much the difference. Is commercials is 10 times more people and a lot more usually roles to be had. And there's no really, sometimes there's specific roles, but it's usually more broad, and they don't know until we show them who's the person, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Can you talk a little bit about self-tapes? I think that self-tapes are on everybody's mind right now. They're, everybody's thinking, what is it going to be like, over the course of the next year? It seems like self-tapes and being able to make a good self-tape is going to get progressively more important. So if you could talk a little bit about what you like to see in a self-tape, or what helps one pop for you, or your preferences there, that would be helpful for us.
Yeah, totally. What I like in a self-tape, obviously, like I like a good, I think the background that you see behind me is not ideal. The background that Michael Bean has is very ideal. Something that's very clear. People are very used to like blue or gray backgrounds, just something that's kind of like more of a muted tone. Not something to be too stressed about. If you have a white wall, you could do it against a white wall. It doesn't really matter. As long as the audio is clear and you can actually see the person. So many times, like I'll see people who shoot self-tapes and it's like shot vertically and they're really far away. Because the things that I'm looking for in a self-tape is like, I want to see the small details, like the small little flickers in the eye and the micro expressions that go on within a scene that I can so easily experience when it's one-on-one. I personally always prefer in-person auditions, but because of, the state of the world, it is going to look like a lot more of self-tapes. And also there's a lot of talk of being able to do sessions all through Zoom. So it would simulate like a casting session. where I'd still be able to communicate with the actor in real time and follow a schedule and all that stuff. I hope that that's the way, because, you know, it's so much quicker. Like if there's like, you had a great read and I want to make an adjustment, I'd just rather do it in that moment as opposed to receive the self-tape, make the adjustment, send it to them, wait for a second, you know what I mean? Like it just turns into, it would get too long. But, you know, I just think like consider when you're doing a self-tape, what would you want the directors and producers to see? You know, make sure that it's good equipment. It doesn't need to be like top-notch, like crazy, amazing cameras, but as long as you can see and hear clearly, I think shooting horizontally or landscape is much better than shooting vertically. Just because I think when you shoot vertically, it just looks a little distorted or something. But yeah, and keeping it eye level. I mean, there's like, I'm pretty sure there's like tutorials on YouTube, but as long as something that I can see and actually like, you know, watch you. If it's hard to watch you, I'm not gonna see the cool parts that you put into the character because it might not be, you might be too far away or something like that. I really look at the micro expressions when I watch a scene, like the small things. So yeah, just something that is clear and looks good. It's pretty simple, but
Thank
you
you.
know.
Now, and again, I think that the folks who are going out of their way to listen to lessons like this one are trying to be ahead of the curve there. You know,
Yeah.
obviously, I'm sure the numbers will change, but typically, what percentage of self tapes that you receive would you say are quality or are usable?
Most of them, I think, you
Oh,
know,
good. Okay.
and most of them are like passable. Obviously, there's some that are like people put more an effort into the actual technical part of it than others. But like, you know, it's nothing that you know, people should really stress themselves out with too much. I think what it just needs to do is you just got to put a little bit of elbow grease in and make a setup that works for you. Like kind of pre-plan it. If it's something that's going to be consistent and that we're all going to have to be doing, I would just like set up a little room in your home or your apartment and just kind of have it there and find something that works, and then just kind of keep that set up there. Because if actors are going to be, it does seem like, I would say everything looks like it's going to be self tapes or Zoom auditions, probably at least for the rest of the year from what I'm gathering.
That was going to be my question, is, you know, what you see coming or what the conversation is like at your office.
Yeah, so with conversations are starting to happen, so that's a good sign. Conversations on both the commercial side and the film side. I know I still have to like catch myself with the news, but they're releasing like a back to film industry plan through phases, and I believe we're on phase 2. So I know like Sean Milliken did a session where it was like 2 or 3 roles, and they just collected self tapes from home for commercials. That's not always going to be possible. I think commercials and ad agencies are also jobs coming in of like, I would say as early as in the next month or two, maybe even sooner, maybe even in a couple weeks. There's a lot of things that like we have jobs that we're on hold for, but it's all contingent based off of the restrictions that will be put in place. So everything's still kind of up in the air. But you know, I think, yeah, expect to see like jobs happening, but there will be smaller, the jobs that will happen, they'll probably be smaller cast, less roles, and probably kind of like geared towards a social distance practice that they can do on set. Um, but yeah, I think I think the film industry is gonna be one of the first industries that really bounce back aggressively. Everyone's kind of looking at the film industry right now to like get the economy up and running again, which is great. So, you know, it's just kind of a little scary too, because, you know, we're the first people. It's like I want to get back to work, but I almost don't want to be the first person, because I don't want to do anything wrong and then, you know, be like made an example of on the news for doing something inappropriate or bad or like not safe. So I kind of, in a perfect world, I'd love to see, you know, people do a couple things, and then, but I know like all producers are working very closely with like CPOC and creating kind of like a booklet, like a safety guide that is, I've looked at it already and it looks pretty thorough. So it's just something that I'm gonna have to do my homework on and study. So in studio casting, I don't know when that's going to happen again, but I know it will be shorter days, less people. Like, I think a lot of people who've done lots of commercial auditions are probably used to going to callbacks and it being an hour and a half, 2 hours behind. those days are over for now, because we just can't have those like flocks of people in studios anymore. So, there's advantages to it too, but it is kind of sad. Like I miss seeing actors. I miss being in the room with people and actually communicating with them in person. So it's a challenge, it's an adjustment, but I mean, I don't fully know. Like we might be back to work in a month, or it might take a few more months. So I'm optimistic, but I'm preparing for anything.
Okay, I'm super curious, to hear what the first Zoom auditions are like. You haven't run one yet. You've just been talking about them.
Yeah, no, we haven't run any of them yet. I know Sean did one and he said it went really well, like
Okay.
very smooth. So I think it's gonna just be a lot of trial and error. You know what I mean? Like so many times for callbacks, we're zooming in clients already. So it's not something that we're like, it's completely new to us. I think it's the only thing that's new is all of us being on Zoom, but it's very possible. And I think it's just going to be like, has to be a lot more organization in the planning of it than actually like, okay, here's our schedule, we'll show up and we'll just do our best. You know what I mean? Like it's got to be really kind of planned appropriately. So it's going to be a learning curve for all of us. But hey, let's learn, I guess.
Okay. Do you want to switch to gallery view so that you can see everybody?
Sure. Oh, there. Hi, everyone. Yeah.
And now we'll take questions. So in the participants panel, you'll see a little like blue raise your hand button if you're not familiar with Zoom. And so just do that. So that you don't have to like wave your hands up in front of the camera. But for right now, if you want to wave your hands up in front of the camera, who's got a question for Kris about anything that he's talked about? Or great. So I see London and Grace. Perfect. And we got a couple of people on Caden and okay. So I might need to cut you off if you have lots of questions, or help you get your question down like pretty concise, because we've just got another 10 minutes with Kris. I'm stoked that so many of you have questions. London, I saw your hand first, but you've muted yourself. There you go.
I was just wondering, do you know like, do you have like do you think you're going to go back in a month? Like, what's your idea when you're...
He just answered that question, London. He just said that he didn't know if he would be back in a month or in several.
It's okay. I think, London, it's like we're talking with a lot of directors and producers now. Like there's a film that's slated to cast in the summer and we're very hopeful. So there's like lots of preparation behind like the work. But I really don't know for sure. Like it's like hopefully a month. That's kind of where because I found it a little confusing. Like, but hopefully a month, but I don't know for sure.
Gotcha. Sierra. I hope I'm saying your name right.
Yeah, it's Kira, but yeah,
Kira.
It's hard, yeah. So I was wondering if you thought that because of now these smaller casts will be harder to be an actress. Like it will be harder to get roles and harder to have that career, if that's what you want.
It's a good question. I mean, I think it really depends on the way. I don't know. Like, it might be more challenging, or there could be more jobs. You know what I mean? Like, people are really wanting to work, and it's not just actors that really want to work. Producers, writers, directors want to get back to work. So I just think because simply there's smaller casts doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be less jobs. So I wouldn't get put off by the idea of smaller casts. I would just think that there's just going to be more smaller jobs as opposed to like these gigantic, enormous jobs, at least from my perspective, because sometimes we'll take on a commercial and that's like the next month of our life, where if we have to hire 150 people, I think it's going to look a lot less like that and more like, all right, you got 4 jobs to do this month. That would be my prediction, but I wouldn't be discouraged. I think it's like we're all in the same boat. We're all floating in space right now. So we're all kind of waiting for that like assurance, but it's coming. I'm very confident. I wouldn't be discouraged. I think it's just going to be maybe a little bit of a learning curve, and to see how it all happens. Like I'm kind of in the same boat as you when it comes to that. Like I'm not fully sure, but I don't think it's going to be any more difficult to be an actor post-pandemic. I think people, if anything, are going to want to really create art after this whole situation.
We've even heard some people speculating about productions that are going to try and do all BC casts so that they don't have to fly anybody in.
Which is a benefit for all of us. Hey. So yeah, I wouldn't be discouraged. If anything, I'd be optimistic because change is good. I think change is good. And I think this is all just changing us to be safer, more healthier. And there's going to be more work. There's a lot of people who have a lot of stories to tell, and they've had a lot of time to write and we'll have a lot more time to write.
That's what we heard from a talent agent a couple of weeks ago. That's one of the larger agencies that represents producers and directors and writers, that there's a lot of pre-production work happening right now.
Yeah, tons.
Caden, do you have a short question for us?
No.
Go for it.
I don't know what my question is now. I forgot.
Okay. Grace and Isla, did you have something that you wanted to ask? No. Okay, Josh.
Okay, am I?
You are.
Okay, got it. Awesome. So sometimes casting directors know that an actor is good at doing one kind of role or character. So what can actors do to break the mold and prevent getting typecast?
That's a good question. The thing is there are, like I said earlier, there's always going to be people that come to mind like, oh, this person's perfect for it. One thing I didn't mention, and one thing that me and Kara love doing, is we love a good wild card. So we'll bring in like people who we anticipate aren't right for the role, but we're just curious about them, and we want to see what kind of style, what kind of energy they are, and what kind of choices they make and how they perceive a role. So we constantly bring in people for the purpose for them to surprise us. So that's kind of on us, right? I think if you're not getting called in for the auditions that kind of stretch your versatility, then this is where I kind of think where, going out and trying to be a part of it's a little difficult now, but like student films and short films and all that stuff that are outside of the world of what your agent can get for you. And then you can kind of build your own resume that way. Cause all the people who are in film school right now, sure, it may not be a huge project that goes on TV, but I can guarantee you they will be my producers and directors and bosses hopefully in like a couple years. Like the new age of filmmakers that are coming out are incredible, and it's so I would just keep exploring as many different avenues. Student films were what got me started in casting, so I would extend that same idea back to you.
And when you're looking at submissions, is it meaningful for you when agents like attach notes, say, Josh is doing this thing, or like, here's a clip of Josh?
Totally. I love getting little updates. Like I am so open and welcome to pushes. Some agents will put like a little blurb on their on all of their submissions. I love being updated, like because everyone's constantly evolving and constantly changing. And as much as I'd love to keep like tabs on absolutely everyone, it's impossible to. So, we kind of treat each job like a brand new job and bring in a new slate of people and try not to kind of overthink it, right? Like whoever's meant for the role is meant for the role. But I love when agents give me little like follow-ups on like what they've been up to, especially if their, progress has been through the roof, or even if they've been going to class and their skill level is at such a different place, but they still haven't been getting called in. Like I love when I know a lot more about an actor, it just kind of helps for me, I get to know them before getting to know them, if that makes sense.
That's great. We have time for just one or two more questions. I see that Kira's got another one. Does anybody who hasn't asked a question yet, you want to jump in there first? Okay, Kira's got good questions. Let's go with hers.
I was wondering if you were still seeing that when actors and actresses turn 18, that it's going to be a really big shift for them in terms of ability to get roles if they've been improving a lot.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 10 years. So I've seen a lot of people like your age grow into adult actors, like from where they first start to like, I feel old. I've been doing this for 10 years. So yeah, roles constantly It really depends, because I think me and Kara work on a lot of projects that don't normally happen in Vancouver. Like, we're not really stuck on a series. So the film and television that we work on are usually in the independent world and tonally very different from, like, you know, the DC shows and the Marvel shows and like the Hallmark stuff. We're always constantly having to do something that's tonally like something we haven't done before. So, and you know, because we cast things that live in so many different worlds, like it really depends on the casting director and how they perceive you. But you know, I'm all about just like, yeah, when someone's ready to take on more mature roles, then yeah, they're just, it happens as you get older. When you're 18, you're going to start going out for college roles. Some people, based on their look, kind of get stuck in high school roles up until they're like 30 years old, but other people are getting called to do college roles when they're much younger. So it really kind of depends on your energy and your vibe and your look in a lot of ways. Like, what world do you belong in this world, you know? Because a high school student on something that's Nickelodeon is going to be different than a high school student that's like set in rural town Alberta. You know what I mean? So it really depends on the project and where you fit in that project. But yeah, as the older you get, the more mature, that's just kind of how it goes. The older you get, the more mature roles that you'll get called out for sure. You won't get called in for kid roles forever because you're not always going to be a kid.
And there often is that, you know, bump when they can hire somebody as an adult, you know, which I think is part of what Kira's talking about, is that you turn 18 and then, you know, you can be hired as an adult, and often breakdowns, you know, most of these young folks will have seen that before, where it says, you know, this age or above to play, you know, so like 18 plus to play 16, that kind of thing.
That will happen for sure. And producers take that into serious consideration, because then they can have you on set for longer and have more time with you. So yeah, that will for sure happen once you turn 18. Yeah.
Okay, that's our half hour. Any final questions for Kris Woznesensky? Yes, there we go. Sandra. Oh, you just muted yourself.
I think you need to unmute yourself.
Sandra, you need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, my question is, from an actress perspective, and we've been told that we're on hold or we've been pinned. We're like on pins and needles, wondering, are we in the top 2? Are we in the top 5? What does that mean? So from your end, what does that mean? What is it?
Yeah, so it exactly kind of what you predicted. Waiting on pins and needles, it usually means you're in the top 2 or top 3. So basically what that means is they have, like, say if it's the top 2, and it's usually around 2 people, it's not as often where there's 3 shortlists. It means, okay, we need to know, so when we pin someone, they're undecided between these 2 people, or it could be a deciding factor on if like another role is cast and this person will be, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many factors on what makes you a pin. If you're pinned, you've already won. Like, you've already kicked some major butt. So if you don't get that role, try not to be discouraged, because the factors that go into making a final casting decision is mind-blowing and incredibly frustrating, and not always the best actor books the role. So it's important to note that. But yeah, essentially we'll pin someone and we're waiting on network approval. So sometimes there's only one person that's getting pinned. We are just pending network approval. But yeah, it's usually between 1 or 2 people. And then when we finally get the approval, we'll send the offer to the actor, and only when that offer is closed would we unpin the other actor, because they want to ensure that they're available in case whatever deal works out. So it's kind of production's way of keeping their options safe, and so the ball's in their court. So super frustrating for actors, and sometimes when they're super busy, sometimes pins can, like if the offer's done and it's done sometimes, and I've done this before, so I apologize, where you forget to release a pin and the poor person's been sitting on pins and needles, and like the role had been cast 2 days before. But Kara is actually really, really amazing for that, to like unpin people and like keep it as organized as possible. But it's exactly what you think it is. It's like, it's between 2 people and it just has to go through a few more hoops. So we can be waiting on pins and needles just like you are. I think the stakes are higher for you, but you know, it's the same thing. Yeah.
So the thing that Kris said earlier about how at the beginning of casting, they think through their list of sort of who the people are before they look at submissions. You know, there are only these 9 casting offices in Vancouver. Like it is a small number of people, and those personal relationships are so important. So if you get all the way down to where the decision makers, decide you're viable, then that's such a bump to the relationship with the casting director. And so that, just to give context for that thing Kris said of like, if you are pinned, if you get that callback, then you've sort of already won. It's because you've shown the casting directors that you're a viable option, because the decision makers think you're a viable option. Is that accurate, Kris?
100%. And another thing too, it's always important to note, like sometimes you don't get a callback and you don't get pinned or you don't get any feedback. I wouldn't, at least with when it comes to me and Kara casting, like we don't have like a blacklist, or if someone has a bad day, we're pretty empathetic. I have bad days too. So try not to let, like, if you feel like like so many times actors will be like, well, I bombed that audition. And I'll be like, I don't think you bombed it. You know what I mean? I thought it was pretty good. So I've noticed like there is a culture of actors being really hard on themselves after an audition, but I would never consider, like I would always look at an audition as an opportunity to just showcase your talents, because even when you come into an audition and you don't get a callback or we keep that audition and we use it as a reference point for other jobs. So if you're like, oh, I want to see what Josh C's been up to, I'll go look at the last audition I saw him and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember him from this. He's perfect for that. Let's bring him in. So every time you audition, I know it's easier said than done, but try not to look at it as, I hope I book this role. Just be like, nope, now I'm going to increase my inventory of auditions for Karen Kris to review. Because the odds are you won't book the role. The odds are always stacked against you. And that's the challenging thing. But just try to keep auditions, like it's fun. Keep it fun, because the odds are you won't book the role. So if you start putting like these stakes on like your booking ratio and this and that and the other thing, that I think can only be like not good for the soul. I think like every audition is an opportunity to just have fun and showcase what you're doing and be willing to collaborate with the casting director. Like it should be a fun experience for kids and adults, because it is, at the end of the day, we're acting, it's creative, it's fun. And if they choose not to book you, then they're lost, because it's very rare where we have an audition where we'd be like, wow, everyone did a bad job today. That's never happened. Like we're always really thrilled. I can't remember the last day where I've been like disappointed in a day of casting. Sometimes I miss the mark and like think this moment is happening in a scene, but that's never the actor's fault. I've made mistakes in casting and misdirected people before, but no, actors are great. Like actors are so cool. They come in, they do their thing, and it's a really cool job to be able to like, allow a platform for actors to like just act and like hopefully, and one of them gets a cool job at the end of it. But at the end of the day, it shouldn't be a less of experience for the other people, because it's just, we're all acting, just because someone books the role doesn't mean they're like the best actor, it just means they're the best person for that role in that given time,
Awesome. Thanks so much for making time for us today, Kris. I'm going to unmute everybody so you can all say thanks to Kris. There you go. I unmuted you. Then you can unmute yourself.
Kris.
Thank you.
Kris, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Michael.
There you go. You're getting
Thank you,
effusively loved up, Kris.
Bye.
Thank you.
That's so good.